I mean, did you used to think it might, or maybe it's racist, or like a lot of us did?
So I understand why people think conversations like the one that we're having is somehow problematic or provocative, or that the things I say they might construe as being racist, because that word is meaningless now. What's happened is the elite class has expanded that word to mean basically any views around migration that they disagree with are now considered racist or xenophobic. I come at this from the point of view of evidence in terms of what we can see is actually happening. I also come at this from the point of view of what I believe makes a cohesive, sustainable national community, which is a shared set of values, shared sense of history or collective memory, shared sense of identity. And a bit like a garden, you want to have that nation protected by strong borders so that people within that nation feel safe and secure. I don't think mass uncontrolled immigration serves any of those things. I think it undermines the very essence of what a national community is. It undermines a shared sense of identity. It undermines a shared sense of history because people don't have the same history. It undermines a shared sense of culture because we're importing people from radically different, and I would argue in some cases, inferior cultures that have not produced the kinds of things that Western civilization and Western culture has produced over recent centuries. And I think now the evidence from the Netherlands to Denmark to Britain is that this is also making us poorer and less prosperous. So why should we stand for it? Why should we not challenge it and critique it? That doesn't make you a racist for pointing that out. That makes you somebody who is concerned about your nation and what comes at this from the point of view of evidence. If you go back 20 years with, say, New Labour and Tony Blair, many people then were deeply uncomfortable about the arrival of mass immigration as a policy. It began in 2004, really, when Tony Blair opened up the doors. That saw net migration, the number of people coming in minus the number of people leaving, that saw net migration reach around 200,000, which at the time was considered to be a really big number. If you look at where we are today, net migration recently just hit almost 1 million, which, is unprecedented. We've had more migration over the last 5 years than we've had really over the last 1,000, if you add it all up. And this is only going to accelerate. This is what a lot of people watching this show don't yet know, right? They haven't yet realized. If you look ahead at what the government's planning with its forecasts, so, we've just had 2.5 million people migrate into Britain over the last couple of years. We've had about 4 million since the COVID pandemic, most of those low-skilled, low-wage workers. Now look at where we're going. By the year 2036, according to the government's own forecasts, we're going to have another 6.5 million people being added to Britain's population, which is about 6 cities the size of Birmingham.
Or entire countries. It's 6.5 million people.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's basically the best part of another London in just about a decade. At the same time, as immigration is now the only driver of our population growth, because our fertility rate has collapsed, our birth rate has collapsed, it's now at 1.4. The replacement level is 2.1, and it's forecast to drop to 1.3 by the end of this century. So immigration, what I'm saying is it's not only changing the country you see today, but basically over the next decade, the scale and speed of change that is going to come through British society as a result of migration from mainly outside of European nations is going to be something on the scale that nobody in this country has ever seen before. So what you're seeing now is just the start of an immigration explosion. Now, the questions that raises around what does it mean for housing? What does it mean for infrastructure? What does it mean for economic growth? We don't have any economic growth currently. What does it mean for social cohesion? What does it mean for our shared sense of identity, history, and values? Nobody in Westminster is seriously talking about those questions. In fact, the only debates that are happening, Andrew, are the debates on podcasts like this one, because even the BBC and others are terrified of really having long-form discussions about this issue because they don't want to get into it because it is so seismic when you actually look at the numbers involved.